Some buildings defy gravity, they defy logic, and some of them even defy common sense, rising in places that no structures should ever exist. Well, here's 15 of the most mind-bending constructions built in the world's weirdest locations. Starting with number 15, the Tomsock Upper Reservoir. Alright, so this is kind of a weird one. It's perched on top of Prophet Mountain in rural Missouri. The Tomsock Upper Reservoir looks like a lake that was built on the edge of the sky. But this massive water basin isn't natural, of course. It's a human-made structure. It's an engineering feat that stores millions of gallons of water hundreds of meters above the surrounding terrain. It was designed as part of a pump storage hydroelectric system. Now, this mountaintop reservoir seems wildly out of place, not just for that visual oddity, but for its function in a location with no river nearby. Completed in 1963, the Tomsock facility doesn't generate electricity like a traditional dam. Instead, it acts like a giant battery. During off-peak hours, when electricity is cheap and plentiful, water is pumped up from a lower reservoir at the base of the mountain up into the upper reservoir. Then, during periods of high demand, the water is released downhill through turbines to generate power, and it produces about 450 megawatts in a matter of minutes. This allows the regional grid to respond quickly to any sudden changes in usage. The design choice to put it on a mountain was dictated by physics. The greater the vertical drop, or the hydraulic head, the more potential energy can be captured when the water is released. Tomsock's nearly 800-foot elevation difference makes it ideal for rapid power generation. However, the location has not been without its issues. On December 14, 2005, the upper reservoir catastrophically failed due to a malfunctioning water level sensor. The sensor failed to detect that the reservoir was full, and pumping continued well beyond safe levels. The retaining wall breached, unleashing over 1 billion gallons of water in a matter of minutes. A torrent of destruction surged down the mountain, severely damaging the surrounding forest and sweeping away the Johnson Shut-In State Park campground, though miraculously no fatalities happened. The disaster exposed serious design and monitoring flaws, prompting a complete rebuild, and in 2010, Amenson completed a $490 million reconstruction project, making the new upper reservoir the largest roller-compacted concrete dam in North America. The scale of this thing is pretty astonishing. The bowl holds 1.5 billion gallons of water. It's enough to fill over 2,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Today, Tomsock is fully operational and it plays a critical role in Missouri's energy infrastructure. While it may seem obscure compared to more iconic dams or power stations, its importance is increasing as the grid becomes more dependent on variable renewable energy sources like wind and solar. Pumped storage systems like this one can help stabilize power fluctuations, storing excess energy and releasing it exactly when it's needed. But in terms of weird construction locations, the Tomsock Upper Reservoir takes the prize for turning a mountaintop into an energy storage tank. Its elevated position and tragic history make it one of the strangest yet most fascinating infrastructure projects in the United States. Number 14. The Antarctic Research Station Halley. In one of the most remote and hostile environments on Earth, the Halley 6 research station stands as a rare example of human construction not just surviving, but thriving on a moving slab of ice. It's located on the Brunt Ice Shelf in Antarctica. Halley 6 is the sixth iteration of a British research facility first established in the 1950s. Now, what makes this version unusual is the location and the extreme engineering required to cope with it. The Brunt Ice Shelf isn't solid land, it's a thick floating platform of glacial ice, and as the shelf drifts outwards, it carries the station with it, an issue that rendered earlier versions of Halley unsafe. The shelf also experiences frequent crevasses and unpredictable calving events, which huge chunks break off into the ocean without any warning. To survive here, the building must not only endure the cold, it has to stay mobile, adaptable, and, at times, evacuate quickly. Now, the station is composed of a series of modular blue and red units, each raised off the ground on giant hydraulic legs mounted on skis. These legs allow the station to be jacked up above any rising snow level and then towed to a new location when the ice beneath becomes unstable. This mobility has saved the station multiple times. In 2016, shifting cracks in the ice forced the British Antarctic Survey to relocate Halley 6 approximately 23 kilometers. Construction of the station began in 2007, and it was completed by 2012. Every aspect of its design was influenced by its weird and dangerous location. The modules are interlinked but separable, and each contains critical systems for power, research, and survival. The central red module, known as the social module, has a dining room, lounge, a gym, and then within the blue models they're used for science labs and sleeping quarters. Temperatures at the site go as low as negative 50 degrees Celsius, that's negative 58 Fahrenheit, with winds reaching hurricane force. The station is also enveloped in months of complete darkness during the polar night, and it runs primarily on diesel generators, but it's incorporated wind turbines and energy-saving technology to reduce fuel consumption. Unlike many Antarctic stations built on bedrock or coastal outcroppings, Halley 6's position on moving ice gives it a dubious distinction of being the only major research station designed to surf on ice. The isolation here is total. There's no nearby towns, airports, or even emergency services. During the long winter months, evacuation is often impossible. In fact, following a series of ice instability warnings in 2017, the station has occasionally been left unoccupied during winter to avoid putting lives at risk. Despite these hazards, though, it continues to contribute critical data to global climate science. It was here that in 1985 British scientists first discovered the ozone hole above Antarctica, sparking international action that led to the Montreal Protocol. Its location is an example of scientific commitment, but it's also a challenge to traditional architectural thinking. Halley 6 isn't just built in a weird place, it's built to move, to evolve, and to outlast the very ground beneath it. Number 13. The Forest Spiral. The Forest Spiral, or the Waldspirale in German, stands as one of Europe's most unusual residential buildings, not just for that twisted shape, but for the location inside a dense urban grid in Darmstadt, Germany, where such a chaotic design seems entirely out of place. Built between 1998 and 2000, what makes this construction pretty weird is that it looks like a tree-covered fantasy palace forcibly inserted into a square, rational, modern German cityscape. From the street, the building appears to spiral up from the ground like a bizarre earthen coil covered in mismatched windows, uneven floors, and a rooftop garden. Though it does contain 105 apartment units, a cafe, and a small courtyard, it refuses to resemble a typical residential complex. There are no right angles in the building's facade. The roof is planted with grass, shrubs, and full-grown trees, and the windows, all of them different shapes, are scattered in an apparently random order. Some windows lean, some peek from beneath domes, and none are the same size. The spiral rises unevenly from 1 to 12 floors, wrapping around a courtyard at its center. The overall effect is one of dissonance. It's a structure that seems at once organic and artificial, whimsical, and unsettling. Yet it kind of works. The apartments inside are fully functional and occupied, and the entire building has become a landmark for not only the city of Darmstadt, but also for experimental architecture. Darmstadt is known for its 20th century grid layout, its Bauhaus influences, and orderly streets. Dropping the forest spiral into this controlled space wasn't just a design choice, it was a philosophical one. The designer despised what he called the tyranny of the straight line. To him, modern architecture was lifeless and unnatural. The forest spiral is a direct response to this, his rebellion against symmetry, repetition, and bland efficiency. The designer believed in a principle called tree tenants, meaning that trees should live in harmony with humans. Some trees grow directly from the apartments, extending branches from within rooms out into the open air. He also promoted the idea that residents should have the right to decorate the exterior of their windows as they saw fit, even painting or reshaping their surroundings. That ethos is reflected in the building's facade. Structurally, the building is complex but stable. It's made primarily of reinforced concrete with design details painstakingly embedded by hand. Colored tiles, gold onion domes, and ceramic columns complete the look. While the result may appear chaotic or even unplanned, it's actually the result of intense coordination between engineers and artists. Despite being located in a city center, where efficiency typically rules design, the forest spiral has endured for over 2 decades. Tourists visit it frequently, not because it's the tallest or most famous building in Germany, but because it's one of the strangest, especially given where it's located. In an age of increasingly modular and prefabricated constructions, the forest spiral's weird location and weirder form are a reminder that architecture doesn't have to conform to its surroundings. It can and does challenge them all, disorient them, and even improve them by making people see space differently. Hundertwasser, the designer, died shortly before its completion, but the forest spiral remains a legacy to his belief that buildings should reflect the messiness and wonder of nature, even when surrounded by steel, cement, and squares. Number 12. The Kansai International Airport in Japan. Built on an artificial island in the middle of Osaka Bay, Kansai International Airport is one of the most ambitious engineering projects in modern history. Unlike typical airports located inland or on coastal flatlands, Kansai sits more than 3 miles offshore, constructed entirely on a man-made platform. Surrounded by water on all sides and connected to the mainland by a 3-kilometer bridge, its location is as strange as it is strategic, and its challenges have become enormous. The project was born in the 1980s when air traffic congestion and noise complaints in Osaka prompted the government to seek a location away from populated areas. The solution? Build an entirely new island from scratch in the bay. Engineers dredged massive quantities of earth and dumped them into the shallow sea. The result was a 4-kilometer-long island capable of housing a massive airport terminal and 2 full-length runways. Opened in 1994, Kansai Airport quickly became known as a marvel. The main terminal, designed by Renzo Piano, is a mile long and features a graceful aerodynamic roof that mirrors the flow of air over an airplane wing. The entire facility was built to withstand frequent typhoons and earthquakes, of course, a necessity in one of the world's most seismically active regions. Indeed, Kansai survived the 1995 Kobe earthquake with no structural damage. The biggest issue here, though, is sinking. The artificial island, built on soft seabed sediment, began settling faster than expected, up to 50 centimeters per year in some areas during the first decade. Constant monitoring and reinforcement have been required to keep the runways and taxiways level. Huge amounts of money have been spent installing adjustable support systems and pumping materials beneath the foundation to stabilize the island. Since it's exposed to severe weather, Typhoon Jebi in 2018 caused massive flooding and shut down the airport after a storm surge overwhelmed the seawalls. Though operations resumed within weeks, the event underscored the vulnerability of placing such vital infrastructure in the middle of a body of water. Despite all the issues, though, Kansai remains one of Japan's busiest international gateways and a major engineering landmark. Its offshore location allows for 24-hour operation with minimal noise disturbance, and the airport also serves as a model for future floating and island-based airports. But what makes the location so weird is that it was both isolated and essential. An international airport floating in a bay, subject to the full force of nature, constantly monitored for sinking, and requiring one of the longest bridges in the world just to access it. Most airports are anchored by geography, positioned to take advantage of natural plateaus or valleys. Kansai ignores that geography entirely, instead tries to reshape it. Japan chose to demonstrate its engineering prowess by constructing a world-class airport where no land existed. Today, it remains a symbol of that ambition, even as it continues to sink inch by inch into the sea. Number 11. The Selena Tura Underground Theme Park. Deep beneath the surface of a sleepy Romanian town is one of the most surreal entertainment venues on the planet. Inside a huge decommissioned salt mine, the Selena Tura Underground Theme Park turns a former industrial cavern into an otherworldly amusement center, complete with paddle boats, a Ferris wheel, and bowling alleys, all suspended hundreds of feet below ground level. The salt mine itself dates back to the 17th century, with documented operations as far back as 1690. It's located in Tura, a small city in Transylvania. This mine served as a major regional source of salt until it was closed in 1932. After decades of abandonment, the cavernous space was preserved due to its unique microclimate and later repurposed in the early 2000s. By 2010, it had been completely transformed into an underground attraction. The most iconic space in the park is the Rudolph Mine Chamber, a cathedral-like space nearly 80 meters tall. Inside it, visitors find an underground Ferris wheel, bowling alleys, a ping-pong table, and amphitheater seating. The combination of low lighting, wooden platforms, and glowing circular designs make the entire chamber feels like a sci-fi spaceship set built inside a cave. Another highlight is the underground lake in the Teresia Mine Chamber, where guests can rent paddle boats and drift beneath dripping salt stalactites. The lake sits in a cone-shaped chamber, naturally formed by centuries of salt extraction. Light installations accentuate the reflective water and create a surreal environment. But aside from entertainment, the location serves a health purpose too. The stable temperature, around 10 to 12 degrees Celsius year-round, and low humidity, combined with its high salt concentration, make it popular for people with respiratory ailments. But nothing about this theme park feels normal. The absurdity of modern amusements placed inside a centuries-old industrial pit surrounded by walls that look like marble but are actually made of compressed salt gives this place a dreamlike quality. From a practical standpoint, it shouldn't work. There's no windows, no natural sunlight, no cell phone service, and yet it draws hundreds of thousands of people per year. It's more than just a weird attraction in a weird place. It is a literal inversion of what we expect from architecture. Instead of building upwards, it goes downwards. Instead of open views, it offers dark and closed majesty. And instead of discarding an old mine, Romania turned it into one of the most unforgettable experiences in the world. Number 10. The Amenson Scott South Pole Station. At the most extreme point on Earth's surface, directly atop the axis of the planet's rotation, sits one of the strangest and most isolated buildings ever constructed, the Amenson Scott South Pole Station, located at 90 degrees south latitude. This scientific facility is the only permanently staffed structure at the geographic South Pole, a place where the sun rises and sets just once each year, where temperatures can drop below -70°C, and where no plants, animals, or cities exist for thousands of kilometers in any direction. First established in 1956 during the International Geophysical Year, the original Amenson Scott Station was a small dome-like camp designed to house a few researchers. Over the decades, it's been rebuilt and expanded multiple times. The current version, completed in 2008, is an elevated modular building that looks like a spaceship that was dropped onto a frozen wasteland. Its location is beyond strange. It is practically inaccessible. The nearest permanent station is over 1,200 kilometers away, and it's reachable only by specially equipped aircraft that can land on a snowy runway, and only during a few weeks of the Antarctic summer, that's November through February. During the long polar winter, no planes can land here, and the station becomes completely cut off. The personnel inside, usually around 40 to 50 people, have to remain self-sufficient for up to 9 months at a time, with no possibility of evacuation. Everything about life here is abnormal. There's no night and day in the conventional sense, just 6 months of daylight followed by 6 months of darkness. Temperatures average around -49°C even in the summertime, and the air pressure is equivalent to being over 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet in the air due to the station's elevation and the Earth's polar flattening. And yet, this remote alien place has become one of the most important hubs for scientific research on Earth. The station supports studies in astrophysics, atmospheric science, glaciology, and seismology. And because of its clear, dry air and lack of light pollution, it's one of the best locations on the planet for observing cosmic microwave background radiation. That's the remnants of the Big Bang. Giant detectors like the South Pole Telescope and Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory operate directly underneath or adjacent to the station, peering into the origins of the universe from the bottom of the Earth. Because the environment's so harsh here, everything has to be imported. Fuel, foods, parts, scientific instruments. Waste, too, must be carefully managed and often flown out. Water is melted from snow, and redundant systems are installed in case of mechanical failure. The structure includes an emergency power station, medical clinic, and enough supplies to support the crew during months of isolation. But what makes the construction so weird is not that it just exists in such a brutal place, but that it functions so well. It's not a symbolic outpost or a temporary camp, it's a fully operational science facility at one of the most inaccessible and inhospitable locations. It's a place where sunrise and sunset happen only once a year, where stepping outside for more than a few minutes without protection is deadly, and where the nearest help is days, if not weeks away by aircraft. There is no road, no town, no civilization, just a steel and composite shell perched on a continent of ice, silently recording the universe from the axis of the Earth. Number 9. The Sun Cruise Resort. Sitting on a seaside cliff in a small coastal town in South Korea, the Sun Cruise Resort is one of the most visually jarring constructions. It's a full-size cruise ship that never set sail, suspended over the edge of a bluff overlooking the East Sea of Japan. It looks like a cruise line that somehow ran aground hundreds of feet above the surf. It's like an architectural paradox that's become both a landmark and a global curiosity. The resort was built in 2002 and modeled after a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, measuring about 165 meters in length and 45 meters in height. Though it looks like it was lifted from the ocean and just dropped onto the mountain by a giant crane, it was in fact constructed piece by piece on top of the cliff from the beginning. The result was a massive hotel that seems frozen in mid-voyage. The decision to build a cruise ship on land wasn't made for purely spectacle, but spectacle certainly played a role. Jongdongjin is one of Korea's most beloved sunrise viewing spots, where tourists flock to see the first light of the New Year's rise over the sea. By placing a ship-shaped hotel on the bluff, the developers created a surreal experience, the feeling of being on a cruise, enjoying panoramic ocean views without ever leaving dry land. The idea was to give people the ambiance of marine travel without the risks of seasickness, isolation, or storms. The resort itself features 211 rooms, including ocean view suites, family rooms, all oriented to maximize views of the water. There's a revolving sky lounge on the top floor, a glass-floored observation deck, and even loudspeakers that play the sound of crashing waves and seagulls to complete the effect. But the resort's location is what truly sets it apart. From certain angles, the ship appears to be balancing on the precipice, ready to tip over into the sea. This improbable placement makes the illusion both impressive and disorienting. There's no pier, no port, no visible dry dock, just a massive ship structure surrounded by a forested hillside. Despite its strange appearance, though, Sun Cruise has become a commercial success, attracting domestic tourists and international visitors seeking the surreal. It's been featured in numerous travel shows, social media posts, and even Korean dramas. It embodies a type of architectural absurdity that works precisely because it commits so completely to the illusion. There's no half measure here. This is a cruise ship in the mountains, and it's not pretending to be anything else. The Sun Cruise Resort. It's a case study in how bizarre architecture, when paired with the right setting, can create a landmark that defies logic and draws admiration. It's not a gimmick slapped onto a building. It's a complete reinvention of a concept, placed in the most unexpected location. A cruise with no engine, a voyage with no sea, a ship that, by staying perfectly still, managed to sail straight into architectural history. Number 8. The Sagrada Familia in Spain. Rising above the elegant grid of Barcelona is a building so strange, so endlessly detailed, and so permanently under construction, it's become synonymous with architectural ambition. The Sagrada Familia, designed by Catalan architect Antonio Gaudí, is a basilica built in location that seems to grow more incongruous with each passing year, the center of a bustling European city, surrounded not by pilgrimage routes or rolling countryside, but by apartments, traffic, and tourists with smartphones. Its construction began in 1882, and more than 140 years later, it remains unfinished. That's not due to neglect or abandonment. On the contrary, construction has continued almost continuously since Gaudí took over the project in 1883. But what makes it so weird isn't just its never-ending timeline or extraordinary height — it will eventually be the tallest church in the world — but the way it looks. It seems to belong to a different era, or a different planet maybe. From the outside, the church appears like a mass of spires, carvings, and towers so intricate and organic that it resembles a forest made of stone. Some parts look like melting wax, others are jagged with Gothic flourishes, and still others resemble spiraling beehives. Gaudí was inspired by natural forms, and he designed the columns like tree trunks, windows like honeycombs, and archways like waves. But as the city around the church modernized with cars, metro lines, apartment blocks, and supermarkets, the Sagrada Familia grew into a surreal island of devotion surrounded by ordinary life. Today, though, the location poses some unique challenges. Construction cranes loom over residential balconies, tour buses clog the narrow one-way streets, and noise from active construction competes with the sound of church bells. And yet, the site remains open and active, hosting millions of tourists each year, with dozens of workers continuing the painstaking process of sculpting stone. Despite all the chaos, though, the church remains in use, masses are held regularly, and the crypts contain Gaudí's tomb. In 2010, Pope Benedict XVI consecrated the central nave as a minor basilica, a formal recognition of its religious significance, even though the building is far from finished. But when it's complete, it will have 18 towers, the tallest of which, dedicated to Jesus Christ, will rise 172.5 meters, just short of the height of the nearby Montjuic Hill, in deference to Gaudí's belief that no human creation should surpass the work of God. But perhaps the weirdest of all is how the structure has been absorbed by the city around it. Apartment buildings now sit mere meters from its base. Locals pass it on their way to school or work, and their view is partially blocked by scaffolding that never seems to disappear. The Sagrada Familia is not just a church in a weird location. It's a contradiction made manifest. Unfinished, yet world-famous. Ancient and futuristic. Devout, yet chaotic. It is a monument to vision, obsession, and the strange reality of trying to build the divine in the middle of a modern city. Moving on to number 7, the Pyramid of Austerlitz. In the heart of the Dutch countryside, hidden among the pine trees, is a mysterious structure that looks like it belongs in Egypt, not the flat woodlands of the central Netherlands. This is the Pyramid of Austerlitz, and its grass-covered earthen mound is shaped exactly like a step pyramid, topped with a stone obelisk. Constructed in 1804 by French troops under the command of General Auguste de Marmont, the pyramid was meant as a monument to military glory. But today, it's one of Europe's most surreal architectural relics. What makes the pyramid so bizarre isn't just that it's a pyramid, it's that it's a pyramid in a country with virtually no elevation, surrounded by forest and built by foreign soldiers for a regime that would be short-lived. Its location feels accidental, even fictional, as if it's a relic from another continent that was dropped into the middle of a northern European park. The structure was created during the Napoleonic Wars, at a time when French forces were stationed in the Batavian Republic, the Netherlands' short-lived Napoleonic-era government. General Marmont was an officer under Napoleon Bonaparte. He had encamped his army in the area now known as Woerdenburg. To keep his soldiers occupied and maybe inspired, he ordered the construction of a grand monument in the style of ancient empires. Drawing inspiration from the Great Pyramid of Giza, the soldiers built the structure entirely by hand, hauling earth and turf to form a 36-meter-high mound with sharply defined sides. At the top, they placed a wooden obelisk, later replaced with a stone version in 1894. The effort took just 27 days to complete, which was an astonishing feat considering the lack of modern equipment and the size of the workforce. Marmont originally named the structure Mont Marmont after himself, but when Napoleon defeated the Austrians at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, the monument was renamed in honor of that victory. But after the fall of Napoleonic regime, the monument fell into neglect. It became overgrown and its shape blurred by erosion and vegetation. The original wooden obelisk collapsed due to rot and weathering, and for much of the 19th and 20th centuries, the pyramid existed more as a local curiosity than a historical landmark. It was only in the early 2000s that a major restoration effort funded by local and national heritage groups began to restore the pyramid to its original form. It represents a brief moment when the Netherlands was at the heart of Napoleon's European empire, and it reflects how military power, identity, and commemoration could be literally embedded into the landscape. The location of it adds to the surreal experience. There's no cities nearby, no grand boulevards leading to it, and no crowds. The monument seems to rise quietly out of the earth, almost forgotten, an accidental artifact of imperial ambition placed in a country better known for windmills, canals, and bicycles. In the context of weirdly placed constructions, the Pyramid of Austerlitz stands out because it's not a repurposed structure or a tourist gimmick. It's an honest-to-history, full-scale pyramid built for reasons of morale and imperial pride, in a part of the world that never had pyramids. It's entirely out of place, and it's all the more fascinating because of it. Number 6. The Carrot House in Poland. Between two buildings in the Wola district of Warsaw is a structure so narrow, it's hard to believe that anyone could live in it. It's known as the Carrot House. This art installation and functional micro-home is considered the narrowest house in the world, with its tightest point measuring just 92 centimeters, that's 36 inches wide. From the street, it's barely noticeable, a sliver of white metal wedged like a shoebox between a post-war apartment block and a pre-war tenement. But inside, it tells a remarkable story about architecture, history, and the creative use of impossible space. The house was conceived by Polish architect Jakub Szczesny and completed in 2012 as part of the Wola Art Project, which aimed to bring temporary art installations into the urban environment. Szczesny was inspired by the irregular void between the two buildings, a result of inconsistent planning in post-war Warsaw. Rather than treat the space as usable, he saw it as an opportunity to explore urban compression and minimalism. Named after Israeli writer and first resident Etgar Keret, the house serves as both a memorial and artistic statement. Keret, who was of Polish Jewish descent, had family members who perished in the Holocaust. His family's story resonated with the concept of survival in narrow spaces, both literal and historic. The house in this context became a tribute to resilience and fitting into forgotten or ignored corners of the city. Despite its micro size, the Carrot House is fully functional. It's got a kitchen, bathroom, sleeping loft, desk space, and stairs, more like ladder steps connecting the two levels. It is vertically organized with storage tucked into every possible crevice. The structure is made of steel and plastic, supported by stilts that prevent it from touching the adjacent building, since it technically doesn't meet Poland's housing code and is legally classified as an art installation rather than a dwelling. But the location is crucial to its weirdness. Most houses stand alone, on plots of land or in defined rows. This one lives in a void, an awkward accidental gap in Warsaw's urban fabric. The surrounding buildings tell their own tale, once a relic of pre-war Jewish Warsaw, the other a product of communist-era reconstruction. The Carrot House sits improbably between them, bridging history and culture. Carrot himself stayed there occasionally and has called the house a place where you can think about what's really necessary in life. While not intended for any long-term living, the house has hosted artists, writers, and travelers interested in its minimalist vision. In the list of strange constructions and even stranger locations, the Carrot House does challenge the very idea of what constitutes a building. It's not just narrow, it's purposefully narrow. It doesn't just fit into its space, it redefines it. And it's more than a curiosity, it's a reminder that even in the tightest margins of the city, something meaningful can grow. Number 5. The Monte Rosa Hut in Switzerland. Rising like a steel crystal from the snowy slopes near Zermatt, the Monte Rosa Hut is one of the most remote mountain lodges in the world. It's located at an altitude of over 2,800 meters or 9,400 feet in the heart of the Swiss Alps. And this structure isn't just a place to sleep, it's a beacon of high-altitude sustainability and radical engineering. The current version of the hut, opened in 2009, replaced an older wooden structure originally built in 1895. Given its isolated location far from the electric grid, sewer systems, or even paved roads, the building had to function as a nearly self-sustaining ecosystem. But what's most visually striking is the shape, a shining angular polyhedron clad in aluminum panels, standing in contrast to the rugged landscape surrounding it. The design minimizes heat loss, maximizes solar energy gain, and resists the brutal wind and snow. Solar panels cover much of the southern face, supplying more than 90% of the hut's energy needs. And inside it sleeps up to 120 guests in a tightly organized bunk of rooms. It features a dining area, kitchen, drying room, and small staff quarters. Water is sourced from melting glacier ice and stored in a reservoir built beneath the structure. But perhaps the most bizarre part is the fact that it exists at all. Everything had to be flown in by helicopter. Wood, metal, piping, wires, furniture, even the screws. The entire building was prefabricated in parts and assembled on site during a narrow window of good weather. Once complete, the building didn't just sit in place, it started collecting data. The hut's equipped with a dozen sensors monitoring temperature, energy use, human behavior, and environmental conditions. It's used by the designer as a living laboratory to study how buildings can operate off the grid in extreme climates, with the hope that lessons learned here might be applied to future space missions or polar bases or even disaster zones. Despite its remoteness, the hut is busy during the climbing season, serving as a base for expeditions to several 4,000-meter peaks. But at night, when the sun sets and the stars come out above it, it becomes something else entirely. It's a spacecraft on a silent, frozen planet. In the world of weirdly located constructions, this hut proves that even the most hostile places can house beauty, innovation, and human presence. It's a mountain refuge and a piece of avant-garde architecture, all balanced on the edge of a glacier, halfway between the earth and sky. Number 4. The Palace of the Parliament. Standing over central Bucharest like a colossal stone giant, the Palace of the Parliament is one of the largest and most bizarrely placed buildings in the world. Not only is it the heaviest building on Earth and the second largest administrative structure after the Pentagon, but it also sits awkwardly in the middle of a historically rich urban fabric that was partially destroyed just to make room for it. Its enormous footprint and the political legacy that surrounds it make this building feel like a palace misplaced both in time and space. Construction began in 1984 at the direction of Nicolae Ceausescu, Romania's communist dictator. Obsessed with centralized power and monumental architecture, Ceausescu envisioned a building that would symbolize the strength of the state and his personal rule. What followed was one of the most aggressive construction projects in modern European history. To build it, over 7 square kilometers of Bucharest's historic core were leveled. Entire neighborhoods were demolished, including churches, synagogues, and more than 30,000 homes. Residents were forcibly relocated, sometimes with only hours' notice. The destruction was so extensive that the Romanians still refer to it as the Ceaușima, a portmanteau of Ceausescu and Hiroshima. The palace itself is an anomaly. It spans 365,000 square meters with over 1,100 rooms, 12 above-ground levels, and 8 subterranean levels, some of which remain off-limits to this day. Every inch of the structure was built with Romanian materials, including marble, crystal, walnut, and wool. Construction consumed nearly 1 million cubic meters of marble and 3,500 tons of crystal. But the location of the building remains one of the most surreal aspects. It's not tucked away on a hilltop or placed on a grand national square. Instead, it's in the middle of a city that's visibly still recovering from decades of neglect. Streets that were once vibrant neighborhoods now dead-end awkwardly at the building's perimeter. From many angles, the structure seems to loom out of nowhere, blocking views and dwarfing surrounding architecture. The forced symmetry and massiveness of it give it an almost dystopian appearance. After the Romanian Revolution in 1989 and Ceausescu's execution, the building, still unfinished, became a national question mark. What to do with a structure so massive, expensive, and politically toxic? Well, many suggested tearing it down, but the scale of the thing made demolition nearly as expensive as completion. Instead, Romania repurposed it. Today it houses the Romanian Parliament, the National Museum of Contemporary Art, and several conference rooms. Much of it, however, remains unused. In urban planning terms, the Palace of the Parliament is a case study in how monumental ambition can conflict with human-scaled city life. It wasn't designed to fit into Bucharest. It was designed to erase and replace it. The weirdness of its location lies in its defiance of context, its disregard for urban continuity and the shadow it casts, both physically and symbolically, over the city that it was supposed to glorify. Number 3. Kudu Private Island Resort. Floating like a jewel in the middle of the Indian Ocean, the Kudu Private Island Resort is as remote as it is luxurious. It's located in an atoll of the Maldives. This resort doesn't just sit near the water, it floats on it. Built entirely over a shallow coral reef and reachable only by seaplane, its location is so isolated that it seems almost fictional. Unlike traditional beachfront resorts, Kudu is composed of a circular collection of overwater villas that hover above these lagoons. Each structure is connected by a wooden walkway to a central ring-shaped pavilion known as the Retreat, which houses the spa, restaurant, and infinity pool. Beneath the villas, reef sharks and manta rays drift by, while above, the solar panels glint in the equatorial sun. Built in 2018, Kudu was designed by architect Yuji Yamazaki with a focus on off-grid luxury and minimal environmental impact. The resort is powered by a rooftop solar system that generates more electricity than it consumes, making it one of the few fully solar-powered private island resorts in the world. Water is harvested and purified on site, and waste is managed through high-efficiency systems. The remoteness of it is part of its appeal, but also part of its strangeness. There's no roads, no ferries, no docks, and guests arrive via seaplane, flying 40 minutes north of Male International Airport over an endless stretch of ocean and atolls. Supplies, maintenance crews, and emergency responders have to travel by air or boat, making every detail of resort operation a carefully choreographed process. Staying here means complete isolation from the rest of the world. The resort only allows one group of guests at a time, catering to a maximum of 26 people, and every service is fully inclusive. But this isn't the kind of inclusivity found in large hotel chains. At Kudu, inclusive means personal chefs, on-demand spa treatments, excursions by private boat or submarine, and even champagne delivered mid-ocean during snorkeling trips. The Maldives is one of the most climate-vulnerable nations on Earth. Rising sea levels, coral bleaching, and saltwater intrusion do threaten many of its low-lying islands, and this place exists not on solid ground but on a reef ecosystem that may one day be underwater. Despite this, though, it's embraced its responsibility to be part of the solution. The resort invests in coral restoration projects, bans single-use plastics, and offsets its carbon emissions. Even the villas are designed to be disassembled and removed without leaving a footprint, though their materials are built to last for decades. From above, it appears like a tiny ring floating in blue nothingness. No mainland in sight, no surrounding infrastructure, just a dot in the ocean. Yet this dot is one of the most sophisticated and sustainable resort experiences in the world. It challenges traditional ideas of what can be built, where, and why. The island isn't just remote, it's improbably remote. A 5-star tech-integrated solar-powered sanctuary suspended between the sea and sky, miles from the nearest shore. It is a feat of design and logistics, an example of how weird locations can become stages for some of the world's most ambitious experiments in architecture and luxury. Number 2. The Ice Hotel in Sweden. In the far reaches, way up there in northern Sweden, well above the Arctic Circle in a small village, there exists a building unlike any other in the world. Each winter, as the temperatures go down and the snow thickens, artists, architects, engineers, and builders converge on this quiet Lapland settlement to begin construction on something that defies nearly every traditional rule of architecture: a luxury hotel built entirely out of snow and ice. The ice hotel is made using massive blocks of crystal clear ice harvested from the nearby Torn River, one of Europe's last untouched waterways. Each year in March, before the thaw begins, workers cut enormous rectangular slabs from the frozen river surface and transport them into cold storage. These blocks sometimes weigh over 2 tons and are kept at sub-zero temperatures all year until November. Along with this pure ice, a specialized material known as snice, a mixture of snow and ice, is created on site using water from the same river. When sprayed into molds and then frozen, snice becomes surprisingly durable, capable of forming thick walls, curved arches, and vaulted ceilings. Construction typically starts mid-November, continues at a fast pace for about 6 to 8 weeks. Using pre-assembled metal molds, the teams will build the supporting framework for the hallways and rooms by spraying snice over the forms and letting it solidify. Once it's hardened, the molds are removed, and what remains is a skeletal building made of snow and ice. It's blank, cold, and ready to be turned into something else. That's when the artists arrive. Every suite in the ice hotel is designed by a different artist or team, selected months in advance through an international competition. These aren't hotel rooms in the conventional sense. They're ephemeral, inhabitable sculptures, if you will. Using chainsaws, chisels, blowtorches, and instruments, artists transform the solid ice walls into elaborate scenes, swirling abstract shapes, life-sized animal figures, forests, faces, symbols, and dreamscapes. Some are fantastic, others are minimalist and calming, and each room has a name, a theme, and a plaque listing the creators, and none are ever repeated in subsequent years. Once the winter ends, all of it melts, meaning every season is a completely new experience. Everything of the hotel is made of ice. The beds, though topped with insulated mattresses, are carved from the giant blocks of frozen water. The chandeliers are made of small frozen fragments lit from within. Even the ice bar is a fully functional cocktail lounge inside the hotel, serves drinks and glasses carved from river ice. Lighting here plays a crucial role throughout the space, with LED systems embedded in the walls and ceilings to bring out the translucency and colors within the ice, giving the rooms an eerie but magical atmosphere. Over the years, it's expanded beyond its seasonal iterations. In 2016, a year-round version called Ice Hotel 365 was launched. This version combines traditional building techniques with modern refrigeration technology to create a permanent structure that can house ice suites and exhibitions even in the warmer months. From a logistical standpoint, though, the existence of this thing is a feat of extreme design and extreme engineering. Unlike typical structures that are typically built to withstand the passage of time, this hotel is intentionally temporary. Every year it's built from scratch. This cycle has continued since 1990, when the first ice hotel opened its doors in a much simpler form. What began as an art gallery inside an ice igloo quickly transformed into a concept that combined hospitality, sculpture, and Arctic survival in equal parts. The artists who designed and build the hotel's rooms, the ephemeral nature of their work is often a source of inspiration rather than frustration here. Many describe it as a liberating creative experience, one where the goal is not permanence but immersion. Some of the works produced for the Ice Hotel are among the most stunning examples of temporary art ever created. Rooms filled with towering sculptures of mythological beings, precise geometric carvings, frozen forests, and even recreations of Gothic cathedrals, all doomed to disappear within a matter of weeks. There is a paradox at the heart of the Ice Hotel. It is one of the world's most meticulously designed hospitality spaces, requires a massive amount of labor, coordination, and effort, and yet its destruction is built into its concept. It's created with the full knowledge that it will melt, vanish, and need to be entirely recreated the following year. This impermanence is part of its appeal, but it also is what sets it apart. Most buildings are designed to stand the test of time. This one is designed to stand in spite of it. The Ice Hotel remains an exception, a destination that cannot be replicated elsewhere, that refuses permanence and thrives precisely because of its wild location and seasonal nature. To sleep inside a room sculpted from ice in a village buried in snow with nothing but a reindeer hide and silence between you and the elements is to participate in something that feels both ancient and futuristic. There is nothing else quite like it on Earth, and perhaps there will never be. Number 1. The Capsule Tower, Japan. In the busy district of Shimbashi in Tokyo, surrounded by the ordinary concrete office blocks, is a structure that once symbolized the future of urban living, an ambitious and deeply strange experiment in architecture. The Nakajin Capsule Tower, completed in 1972, stood as a radical departure from everything else in the city. It was small, it was modular, and it looked like a stack of washing machines just fused together with a brutalist office block. And it was built with the dream that humans might one day live in swappable capsules, tiny self-contained apartments that could be inserted and removed like batteries in a machine. Standing only 11 stories tall, the building may not have been a skyscraper, but it's long held a place as one of the most famous architectural experiments in modern history. Designed by architect Kisho Kurokawa, the Nakajin Capsule Tower was the physical embodiment of a movement known as metabolism, which had taken hold in Japan's architectural scene in the 1960s. Metabolist architecture rejected static buildings in favor of structures that would grow, change, and evolve over time, like living organisms. The idea was born in the aftermath of World War II, during a period of intense rebuilding and rethinking of urban life in Japan. Tokyo was expanding rapidly and land was expensive, and architects were desperate to find ways to house growing populations in limited space. The Capsule Tower was Kurokawa's idea to the question of how to create adaptable housing for an uncertain future. Now, the building consisted of two central concrete towers, each containing the plumbing, electrical systems, and elevator shafts. Attached to those towers were 140 individual capsule units, compact prefabricated pods that measure about 2.5 meters wide by 4 meters long and 2.1 meters tall. Each capsule was bolted to the core with just 4 high-tension steel bolts designed to be entirely self-contained. Inside each unit was a built-in bed, a bathroom, refrigerator, television, folding desk, audio system, and storage space. A round porthole window gave the unit a distinctive sci-fi appearance, and every capsule was manufactured off-site. Kurokawa's vision was that the capsules could be swapped out over time as needed. If one wore out, it could be removed and replaced with a newer version, upgraded with better materials or more advanced technology, all without having to rebuild the entire thing. When the tower opened in 1972, it was hailed as an experiment, a bold one, and a possible blueprint for the future. But even from the beginning, the building was more of a concept than a practical application or a solution. The capsules were tiny, barely large enough for one person to sit, sleep, and turn around in. For most people, the idea of living in a space smaller than a parking spot with walls made of steel and fiberglass was not appealing. The interiors aged quickly, and the promise of modular replacement capsules never materialized. The air conditioning and plumbing systems housed in the central cores deteriorated, and by the 1980s, many of the capsules were already falling into disrepair. The tower did attract a cult of following among architecture enthusiasts, sci-fi fans, minimalists, and even artists. Some compared it to the imagined future seen in films like Blade Runner or the compact living quarters of 2001: A Space Odyssey. For a while, it was popular with bachelor salarymen who needed a crash pad in the city during the work week. Others used the units as studios or creative offices. Kurokawa himself spent the latter part of his life lobbying for its preservation, but the practical problems mounted. By the 2000s, nearly 80% of the capsules were uninhabitable due to water damage, mold, and malfunctioning infrastructure. By the 2010s, a movement to preserve the tower had gained some international traction. Architects, designers, and historians around the world argued that the building was one of the most significant examples of metabolist architecture left standing. It had become not just a curiosity, but a symbol of a once hopeful vision of adaptable urbanism. Preservation societies formed. Plans were floated to restore the capsules or convert it into a museum, but the economics of restoration were difficult. Tokyo real estate prices made the land more valuable than the building itself, and the tower's many problems would have required not just replacing the capsules, but also rebuilding the entire internal system. In 2021, after years of debate and delay, the decision was made to demolish the Nakajin Capsule Tower. Dismantling it began in 2022. But in a final gesture of respect to the building's original vision, a number of capsules were carefully removed and preserved. Several were sent to museums or private collectors, while others were restored and displayed in exhibitions. The demolition wasn't the violent wrecking ball process one might expect. Instead, it was a delicate operation aimed at removing the capsules as cleanly as possible, documenting their structure, and saving what could be saved. The death of the Capsule Tower was seen by many as the end of an era. It had stood for 50 years as a monument to a different kind of thinking, a belief that architecture could be modular, flexible, and almost biologic in its approach. Though it ultimately failed in practice, its influence remained profound. Architects from around the world took inspiration from Kurokawa's ideas, even if they didn't copy his methods directly. The dream of modular housing, of cities built like ecosystems, continues to inspire urban designers. Today, the tower lives on in fragments. A few of its salvage units have been refurbished and placed in public spaces or exhibitions. One sits in a museum in Tokyo, another's on display in Nagoya. A third was shipped to France, and these isolated capsules, stripped of their context, still speak to the radical imagination of the man who designed them and the movement they represented. In the end, the Capsule Tower was not just a building in a weird location. It was a building from a weird idea, a dream that architecture could be fluid, replaceable, and ever-changing. While it never fulfilled its potential as a living structure, it remained one of the boldest attempts to challenge the way we think about building, spaces, and future cities. And though the tower itself no longer stands, its story still continues to provoke and inspire. It wasn't just ahead of its time. In some ways, it still is.